Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. Today, I was given the wonderful opportunity to be able to catch up with Cameron. Now, Cameron runs a couple of interesting fitness-related businesses, but also he has a experience in running businesses as well. So I wanted to kind of catch up with him, talk to him about those, talk to him about some general bits and bobs, and also to find out a little bit more about his experience with us creating a video for him as well. So that was fantastic. And thank you ever so much for watching and listening, coming back and enjoying it. And I'll see you in a moment when after Cameron has done a little bit of an introduction on who he is and a little bit of his background. So I'll see you in a moment.
So I'm Cameron Readman. What am I? Who am I? I actually started my career as a rocket scientist. My degree is in engineering. So did that for a while. Then I started up some events businesses and ran those. They were all around immersive experiences and things like that. And now currently my main focus is on fitness. I went through my own fitness journey, my own fat loss journey. So I run one business, which is called The 1% Way, which is all about fat loss and using mindset over diet and exercise plans, all that kind of stuff, sort of leveraging mindset for fat loss. And then the other business I run is called Steel Viking. And at the moment that takes its formation as a boot camp, a fitness boot camp.
Fantastic. And, really appreciate the time as always. Whenever anyone gives me time, so I really appreciate that. But welcome to the podcast. And it was interesting because we met originally at, I think, a Digital Drinks that Richard from Blue Flame Digital actually put on, if I remember correctly. And, it was this odd conversation because it was basically, so I help people run around with a shield was the crux of the conversation, wasn't it? And, for those who don't know, do you want to just sort of kind of explain why that is actually really good for your health? Because I think that's the main thing that people are not going to necessarily understand. It's like, well, why am I running around with a shield? How does that help, so to speak?
So there's a few angles really that you can come at it from. One of them is just having fun when you're doing fitness. So part of it is using basically a bit more of an immersive experience. Basically it comes from a hatred of other kind of boot camps, really. Hatred is perhaps a strong word. Dissatisfaction.
Strong dislike.
Yeah, a dissatisfaction with kind of other boot camps, just watching them and how prolific burpees are used in those kind of boot camps and all that stuff. And I just looked at them and thought, oh man, that looks boring. Why are good people paying money to do this? There's a better way to do it. So Steel Viking, it's more, you pick up an axe already. That gives you almost kind of a sense of power when you're holding the axe. And so we do all different kind of exercises using those tools, using a shield, use axes, using spears, swords, and even just stuff that you might find a Viking with grain sacks and all this kind of stuff, throwing those around. So we do that. So that's one side. The other side is functional fitness, again, to kind of pick on the burpee in terms of generating it. So I like to use the word multi-planar movements and things like that. A lot of the time in the gym, in a controlled environment, in a press up, how often do you do that motion of a press up in real life? Not that much. You're carrying shopping around, you're lifting things out of a car, kind of away, up and away from you, all that kind of stuff. And you're rotating, you're turning around, you're doing all this sort of stuff. So when you've got axe and you're bringing that down, you're going through multiple planes of movement. That's where the multi-planar movement comes from. You're going through multiple angles of movement to complete that whole thing. And this is why we'll team up a shield with a sword, for example. So you've got a counterweight to kind of contend with as well, all that kind of stuff. So it's about that kind of functional fitness that creates as well. And by functional fitness, really that just means it's useful for you in your everyday life and things like that. And then obviously you've got all the other stuff. Once you're having fun, once you're generating functional fitness, you feel stronger, you feel healthier, you feel better. So really those are the main bits that come into it, really. Having fun.
For me, what jumps to mind when you were talking about the shield and sword aspect of it was the first time, the sense of the feeling when you try and teach someone how to use a gimbal or mostly a glide cam or a steady cam, and they use muscles in their back that they've never used before, and all their reaction is ow, this hurts, oh my god, this is painful, oh god, why does this hurt so much? is basically the reality, because you're using muscles that you just won't have used normally. And for those who are Steadicam operators or people who do camera work, you'll know exactly what this is. But it's this very weird, and I imagine it's very similar in what you do, but you use so many different muscle groups to keep that camera stable or on the same level, or keep the horizon steady, or etc. And I think that's what you do is really, really valuable, because it's not just, of course, if you went into a gym and you lifted weights and etc., you'd become perceivably stronger, right? Overall, right? But it's the little muscle groups, or those muscle groups that are arguably forgotten about or harder to work out at a gym, that actually we use a lot in our functional. I mean, am I right in assuming that? I mean, that's what my brain jumps to, is those smaller ones in the back, etc., etc., to really help those, as you say, those real life. I'm picking up the shopping out of the car. I'm carrying the shopping. I'm having to put something up on a shelf that is heavy, or whatever it is that you're actually doing, right? I mean, is that kind of like where I guess the unique selling point of you from what you do really comes from?
In terms of the functional fitness angle, 100%. It's all the, and bringing the back into it. One thing that we all do is we all sit a lot, and one thing that a lot of people don't do when they go in the gym is back exercises, and that's sitting down a lot and all that kind of stuff. That's where we generate the weaknesses. It's all in the posterior chain, so it's all, unfortunately, it's in our butt as well. For those people who want big butts, we get weak butts, we get weak hamstrings, and we get weak backs. So people operating a Steadicam and things like that, that's a lot of those muscles are in their back, and it's generating that. And bad posture as well. It's almost endemic bad posture these days, and pulling those shoulder blades back and all that kind of stuff. And when we go in the gym, when we do a lot of these, press up his chest, and to be honest, without some kind of tool, just doing it free weight, body weight, it's actually quite hard to do back exercises. And so using things like the shield, using things like the axe, all this kind of stuff, we can then get the back more involved, which helps improve people's posture, and helps kind of bring the focus back to what's important. I think that's the vital point to get across when we're talking about people like to use these words as buzzwords, like functional fitness, all this kind of stuff. And when you're kind of immersed in the fitness world, people are using it all the time, but they're not really explaining it, or even necessarily using it correctly. But all it means is useful for you in your life, and based off kind of taking another approach to it based on what weaknesses you're generating in your life. So that's sitting and the weaknesses that are generated in your back and upper body and things like that. So it's useful fitness.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. I mean, the next question, or the next thing that really jumps to mind to me, is because you said earlier a little bit that you had other businesses and etc. I mean, what made you sort of jump to what you do now, right? Because I think there's a natural, to an extent, there's a natural progression in what you do now, but also what you did do. But there had to have been a transition period, right? Like, was there a specific trigger to that transition, or what? Like, what was that? What was the story behind that?
So when I left being an engineer, I actually was being an engineer and running businesses at the same time. Kind of had this whole side hustle thing going on, all that kind of stuff. So basically, I'd work my I'd work my 8 hours and then come home and work another 6 hours. Unsurprisingly, I got very fat myself doing that. And then even once I started running my businesses full time, I kind of continued that trend. I basically made a choice. I'd sort of decided, you know what, my business is more important. I'm going to put health on the wayside for now. I mean, my businesses were successful. So do I regret that decision? It's kind of a complex question to ask, and I probably won't go into it here. But it wasn't the best decision to make, because once the fat's there, it's hard to get rid of. All of that kind of stuff. It would have been better to take steps to at least maintain my health and things like that. So I ran those businesses, and those businesses that I ran were sort of immersive experience events. So it's an events business, and it was kind of like, the best way to describe it is kind of like murder mysteries. We'd give people a character, create an immersive environment, and kind of give them scenarios, Another example might be kind of escape rooms, although you're not really given a character to play, you're just yourself in an escape room. These events are more, you're given more of a character to play. And to be honest, when people are trying to do that, creating an immersive environment that helps them get into a character and helps them believe that one of the events we ran was Murder on the 1016. So it literally kind of was a murder mystery, but they all had characters, they all had costumes. We got everyone on a steam train. And to be honest, the steam train and all the stuff that we did as the event organizers was about helping people stay in character, creating that immersive environment. So I learned a lot there about how powerful immersive environments can be, and kind of how to create them on a budget as well. We haven't all got Disneyland money. We haven't all got VR headsets that everyone can wear and the programming skills to program in an environment. So creative ways to do that. Learned a lot through that experience, and that's sort of what carried over into Steel Viking was the immersive experience element. So, and how immersion can help generate fun, how immersion can help change people's mindset and get people into a different mindset as it relates to fitness. Maybe push themselves a little bit harder, all that kind of stuff, and in general having a good experience. So Steel Viking is about having a good experience instead of just going there and doing burpees in the cold and the mud. It's a bit more fun doing workouts in the cold and the mud when you're imagining yourself as a Viking and you're getting ready for battle, and it's a cold, wet, muddy battlefield, and you're hammering away with the axe, and there's an opponent, there's an enemy in your head. There's someone you're competing against almost. So that's kind of where the immersive element comes in, and then talking about my own fat loss journey, and that pertains to sort of the fat loss course that I run as well. Is I just decided, it kind of in a selfish way. So I sold those events businesses, and sort of said, you know what, I'm going to use what I've got, transition that across. But what I want to do next, I want to do a health focused business, because number one, I need to get my own health sorted. I sold those businesses, and it's just one of those kind of confluence points where a few things come together, and it's sort of like, okay, I made a decision a while ago to put health by the wayside. It wasn't a great decision. I need to sort that out. It would really help me personally if I create a fitness-based business, and sort of try and solve problems in the fitness industry that I've seen and encountered myself. And then I lost 40 pounds as well myself, which was tough, but in a way easy. I think, again, kind of relying on things in my background, being an engineer, I'm very science literate. So I have a massive advantage over a lot of others in being able to read scientific literature. My missus is also a clinical scientist, so I get access to a lot of papers that a lot of people don't have access to through her portal access, all that kind of stuff. So all the educational portals and things like that. So it's really just a confluence of all those factors, really. Bringing experience, and just personal goals as well. And I think that can, when you've got that personal investment in a business, I think that can really drive it towards not just success for yourself, but success for others. And how many PTs do you know that have lost 40 pounds of fat? A lot of kind of done it in college, come straight out and have always been in shape. They became a PT because they were in shape as a kid. And they did a lot of sports and stuff like that. And there's not a lot that, one of the kind of things that I've harked on is busy people with real lives, and all that kind of stuff. If you don't live in a gym, if you've got a limited amount of time, if you've got a family, if you're working a lot, all that kind of stuff, how do you get fit and lose fat? And that's a real problem for a lot of people. And my business really are trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to establish, firstly where your priorities are, which is a lot of what you're talking about there, but also to understand that there needs to be a certain balance, right? Because if you're not health wise, maybe not on top form, but if you're neglecting it, so to speak, like you hinted at the potential you did at the start of your career, it can actually have a huge knock-on effect on whether you're actually able to run the business as effectively as you would want to or can, like mentally, right? Like, it's this constant balance between, yes, you have a lot of work to do, but also you need to make sure that you're looking after yourself to make sure that you can actually do that work sustainably. And I think it's really important, and something that I've noticed as my business is growing, but also as I talk to other business owners, is that they sometimes, and I'm included in this, push a little bit too hard on the whole, we've got work to do, things are going well, let's continue to do this, because it's kind of a chain reaction, right? You find a formula, that's what I mean, you find something that works, and they're right, okay, so I've just got to emulate this all the time, right? But what ends up happening eventually is, if you're not careful, when you don't trust yourself and you don't actually learn what your body's trying to tell you, because your body will tell you, is that you'll just end up burning out, and then you can't work for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, and that's actually going to cost the business more than you just taking your foot off the gas for a day or two, or giving yourself a morning off or giving yourself an afternoon off. It's not this whole, oh my god, I pushed really hard, I have to be off for a week thing. If that's what, everyone's different, right? But if that's what you have to do, I mean, I've just come off that deliberately, and the last 2 days were pretty full and pretty rough, but there was a lot of big things that I needed to handle and we're part of, which is what we're very fortunate to be able to do. But also I knew that, okay, so I'm going to schedule Wednesday deliberately so that basically there's nothing in the morning at all that I need to do, so I can take that time to take a step back and relax and sort of recharge a little bit, and so then I can still do some work, so I still want to, but it's mainly focused around the afternoon and more into the afternoon, into the evening, more than it's necessarily in the morning, which is one of the massive benefits of working for yourself, because you can do that. If you decide, actually I don't want to work this afternoon, or actually I don't want to work this morning, I don't want to work today, then you don't have to. But also that comes with the counteract, where there's some weekends where you have to work all the way through, for example. And I'm sure you've had it, and I'm sure lots of others have had it as well. But I think it's really interesting, and I'd be interested to hear your feedback as well, because I know we briefly talked about this privately, but I think that it would be interesting for the viewer as well to sort of hear, because we supported you, for those who don't know, we supported you on an Indiegogo launch video, right? And I think it'd be interesting to hear sort of how that experience was. Now we're sort of further away from it than necessarily like right after the shoot when we had the pre-meeting. So how was it? Did you find it?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, I've done quite a bit of film. I filmed a trailer at one point for a book that I wrote, which was kind of an in-character trailer. So that was a lot different, and reasonably experienced on Kickstarter and things like that. So it was, in terms of the things going on outside the video, that's all stuff I was already fairly familiar with. But then, yeah, working with you guys was, I mean, a big part of it, to be honest, was being able to go like, hey, so met you the other day. I've got some filming. It needs to be done quick. What can we put together, kind of thing. And then the support in doing that was great. It was kind of like, okay, well, I've got this window here. Let's go and get a gym. Let's put something together. There was other options. There was going out into a wooded area, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, maybe you can tell from this podcast already, but I'm a bit of a rambler. So one of the big things that I have an issue with, it's in my writing as well, not just speaking. I go on a bit, and so being concise, especially in something like a Kickstarter video where people are usually going to tune out after sort of like 30 seconds unless you've really hooked them in with a strong hook. So working with you guys was really good in getting me to be concise, which was great. And then working through the material that I'd kind of already written as well, and deciding, okay, let's kind of lead with this. We kind of changed the order that we went through it with, and then I think that might have even changed in the final cut as well. Stuff was cut differently depending on what we decided was most important. So yeah, it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. And some of the shots are beautiful of me using the hammer, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was great. The video really worked. I think the Indiegogo itself wasn't successful. to be fair, I set reasonably high targets for things like that, because I'm kind of an all or nothing. I want to know, and this is the benefit of any crowdfunding. I want to know if there's significant legs to something, or if I need to put in more groundwork. And it's not really down to the video; it's more down to my groundwork on social media, things like that. And had I met Carlton earlier, I'm sure he could have helped with that as well, establishing that groundwork. Like I say, it was all very last minute, getting the video together and things like that. So I hadn't necessarily built up done all this, like built up the email list, all that kind of stuff before launch. However, having said that, the people that did donate, they were my new email list and things like that. So I now have a base list of clients to sort of go off, and the hammer kind of rollout is kind of slow time. And I realize I've not even really explained what the hammer is, but maybe it's incidental. I don't know. It's a fitness hammer. It's not a weapon. That's
definitely not. And
it's definitely not a weapon.
And this was an interesting joke that we ended up coming up with, because one of the main misconceptions I asked at the very beginning was, okay, how are we going to establish that it's not a weapon specifically, right? And now it's been a standard joke between us since then. And for me, it's really interesting to hear kind of how the production went in regards to like what was the idea and then what was the reality. And I think the main thing, the main takeaway for me anyway from that is, can you do things quickly? Yes. Sometimes should you? Yes. But also you need to be aware that sometimes if you're going to do things quicker, or you're going to do things that are faster than normal, that you are going to have to cut corners, or it is going to be slightly more challenging to necessarily do it as polished, not meaning it isn't going to be polished, but as polished as it could be if, say, for example, you had planned it for like a year's worth of campaigning, for example, to then have a launch at, say, the end of the year, right? So, I'm sure it is something that you hopefully have learned from, and something that you will, think about moving forward as well. But, from our side, it was great to sort of, because how I operate the company is a lot of like this kind of like, okay, let's just go with it and see if we can work out. We've got this idea. Let's go and try and execute on it and see how far we can get until we run into a big hurdle. And a lot of the time you find, and the reason why I mention it is because it's quite a good mindset to have in business, because there's never a good time to start a business, right? There's never a good time or optimal time to go out on your own, or to be in a position where you're like, I'm going to go full time. That's never a good time, or I'm going to take on staff, or I'm going to take on an office, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. There's never a good time for that. It doesn't exist. There's an illusion. And one of the main quotes that jumps to mind is, when it feels the scariest to do is the time you should do it, right? I forget who made it, but the principle of that quote is basically, it's when you get there, it will feel terrifying, but that's exactly the time when you need to do it, because the opportunity will have passed if you don't. And sometimes there is an opportunity, but it's not in your perfect time window that you need to necessarily take. And I think that's exactly what the video was necessarily in some cases as well. Like, there was an opportunity to, okay, let's give this an all, let's give this a go, let's see what happens. And yes, unfortunately, it didn't hit what we both wanted it to hit in the respect to getting the hammer funded and getting it to.
Well, I will say it had a great. The video itself, even when used as an ad, had a great conversion rate and all that kind of stuff. So it was clearly doing its job. It was more my groundwork wasn't sufficient leading up to it. And I was known for that. The business was known for boot camps, not
hey, we've got this product.
Fitness hammers, yeah, not products yet, which is where it will still move. But yeah, it's more slow time, and that video still works. And the thing is, I will always kind of recommend crowdfunding, even if it doesn't end up being successful. And like you say, that there's no good time. Sometimes as well, you just have to hit launch. You go, well, my prep isn't good enough. It's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be absolutely perfect. I mean, one of the first Kickstarters I ran was shot on an iPhone, and it was around 2017, so it wasn't even a good iPhone. It wasn't like the cameras we've got on iPhones today, and all that stuff. But the idea was good enough. So sometimes it's about the idea, sometimes about other prep work, sometimes it's about who you are as a person, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of factors that sort of go into it, and it never will be perfect. But having said that, there's so many benefits. One of them is SEO. For better or worse, that thing is on, it's on Indiegogo, yeah, not Kickstarter. And yeah, it's on, for better or worse, it's on there forever, but that video is up there forever. I'm proud of it. I mean, so long as you're reasonably proud of what you're putting up, then it is a go for it kind of thing. And that SEO, I still see on my Google Analytics people clicking through from that. So I'm now getting a throughput from people that have seen it and gone, oh, this is interesting. What's happening? You know, you put once the campaign is finished, a link goes up instead to your website. So it's generating me website traffic, all that kind of stuff. So even if it's not successful in terms of the funding, there's lots of reasons to still sort of go ahead and push the button.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really important thing about marketing, and that's a really important point about marketing as well, that, you know, firstly, is a video good or not is kind of subjective down to you, but also it's not your choice to make, it's down to the market. But also, you know, something which could do really well for you, you won't know until you put it out there, and it might sit there and not do very well for 6 months or 8 months. And then something might happen, might get reposted by someone, something might happen in a trend perspective that means it suddenly is in trend like magically, and you just happen to have the video, and then you ride the kind of trend wave up without even knowing about it. For example, we've watched that happen as well. And, you know, it then can push traffic to your website, to your Facebook, to your Instagram, wherever you're sending the traffic, that then could become clients, that then could become interesting leads for you, then could become opportunities for you. I mean, what role would you say in your experience that marketing has really played in what you do and how you do it? Because I think sometimes there's a massive misconception with, oh, we don't need to market because things are fine.
I would, to anyone who says that, I would heartily disagree. I'd say it's, especially at the beginning, so in startups, things like that, it's almost 100% marketing. You know, I can't run a Steel Viking boot camp if I don't have clients. That's it. That's the end of the story. I can't even start a boot camp if I don't have some kind of seed funding, some kind of client base, so that I can generate a bit of money, maybe get a few products out there, or get something together and then build from there. You need to build kind of, I've always bootstrapped my startups, so I've never got them. You know, some of them been crowdfunded, but that crowdfunding is all marketing effort. So even though the business product hasn't existed, the business has existed for a while. You know, I would say a 6-month lead up minimum to a crowdfunding campaign, something like that. So you're doing 6 months pure market. All you're doing is marketing. That's it. That's all the business is doing at that time. Maybe putting together some preliminary stuff for the products, but you don't know if the product's going to exist yet. So there's risk involved with doing too much on the product side of things. Again, as well, before a crowdfunding campaign, people usually want to see a prototype, something like that. So there is some of that activity going on. So maybe 10% of your time is spent doing that. 90% is marketing, 100%, and it's all social media. And I'm a big fan of agile methodology, which is something that's come from engineering, but is being used more and more in the entrepreneur world. Eric Ries, the Lean Startup, is a great example of this. And it's all about test and pivot. This kind of idea, everyone has assumptions, all right? So a classic example of someone who wants to start a business. I got this business idea. I think it's great. And this kind of goes on to what you were saying. I think it's great. I think it's going to do really well. Well, okay, you're assuming other people think it's great. How can we test that? That's one thing that crowdfunding is good for. We're testing ideas, just putting it out there. And then you've got to make a decision whether it's funded or not, whether you pivot and do something else, or you change the test and you go, okay, here's or you look at the test and you go, okay, these kind of things, we made these wrong assumptions. What more assumptions can we test? Is it that, so for my hammer, okay, is it that it's, people don't think it's a good product? Well, no, that's not really what the engaged people are telling us. So is it that our reach is a problem? All this kind of stuff. and there's so many assumptions that you can enlist, and it's like, right, well, now I've got my test list. Now I've got my list of assumptions. I've got my test list, and I can go through and test all these things and see if it's worth. And maybe your pivot point is you get to a point where you go, okay, stop, something else entirely. This is not the product for this business. This is not who we've we've already got engaged customers. They're not engaging with this product. So how do we pivot and change that and move somewhere else? And maybe we take the business in a slightly different direction, things like that. So yeah, I've kind of forgot. I've rambled and I've kind of forgot the original question.
I think it brings up a really important point though, because a lot of the time with videos, everyone asks me, when am I going to see ROI? Right? Or whenever we do marketing, they're going to be like, when am I going to see ROI? When am I going to see my return on investment? And then I always ask them, at the start, I ask them, what would you be your definition of that? Is it pounds in the till, pounds in the bank account? Okay, fine. Okay, so let's look at that. Or is it engagement? Is it visibility? Is it customer trust? Is it customer understanding? Etc. All these things are things that we can use video to help increase, but we need to understand what it is that you want for it to do first. Because one of the main metrics we look at is, okay, well, how are we going to track to see if the video worked or not, right? Because it's very, very rare where you do a video and then it suddenly means that I suddenly want to buy your product instantly. It's very rare. And normally what happens in that case is actually the video is the final tipping point for that person to actually then purchase. Because a lot of the time in marketing, and a lot of the time when we ever talk about this, we talk about know, like, and trust, but the main concept there is we're actually warming up that audience member, warming up that person to firstly know who you are and why your products and your service is valuable, but then also, do they like it? Do they enjoy it? Do they enjoy using it? Do they see it in their life being useful? But then also, I'm not going to spend money with you unless I trust you. So I need to trust that if I say we're going to provide you a video and you don't trust me that I'm going to provide you a video, you're not going to pay for a video, for example, right? You're just not. But if you trust that I'm going to provide you with a video, okay, well then you'll pay for it, because you already, and especially because we've worked together before, you'll actually know what quality it is now as well. And this is where, like, actually making your own content, especially if you're a marketing company or someone who creates a form of marketing content. So that could be you're a blog writer, that could be you're a podcast producer, that could be you're a sound engineer, whatever. You help people create content in one way or another, or you're a video production company, or you're even a marketing agency. You have to prove what you're saying on your own socials, on your own platforms, on your own website, because otherwise, where's the credibility? How do I know you're even in business, number one, but also number two, how do I know you're any good? If I can't see any, as a video production house, for example, or camera operators, I always ask them when I'm looking to possibly hire them as a freelancer or in general, I look and say, okay, well, can I see some of your work? Okay, can I see your show reel? Can I see your website? Can I see something that you've shot? Or a set of things you've edited, because it allows me to gauge, okay, firstly, how good are they? Secondly, what's their style? And thirdly, what kind of what cost they're going to be, because I can kind of tell quite quickly what gauge and what level they're on, which kind of allows me to gauge what price they're going to be, and then I can keep projects in mind for them, if that makes sense. And you can do the same with products, you can do the same with anything, but if you're buying a service or product from anyone, that's what I would suggest to anyone, is you really, really look and you really, really ask them, or ask them to prove it, or go and look and see if they are proving it. If they're proving it consistently to you, then it's probably more likely that you can trust them. It's probably more likely that you can actually be in a position where it's like, yeah, actually these guys are, what they say they are. Because it's so easy now to go, I am a serial entrepreneur, I've opened multiple businesses, blah, blah, blah. I can change my bio to that right now if I wanted to. But it's a bit different to actually get the point to be validated. It's different to be the point where you actually get that credibility check. I mean, have you found that some people, in your experience, whether it's you personally or a business you've seen, finds it sometimes difficult to prove what they're doing, and that they are very credible? With that, like,
I'd say that's one of the main problems is, and that's one of the big things to build up. That'd be my advice to a lot of people starting a business is, okay, you've got this idea. It's hard to even tell if the idea is good or bad. So this is one thing that comes into the hammer. Actually, you harked onto it a little bit earlier. One of the assumptions that I've made that I'm trying to test is I didn't necessarily show enough how to use the hammer necessarily in my previous marketing materials, things like that. How you can use it effectively in a Kickstarter video where the goals are kind of different. It's kind of hard to. We did a good job, but I hadn't built up a lot of that kind of social proof, and you want other people using it as well, things like that. So, that's part of my next plan with that really, is to give it out to free for influencers and things like that, all that kind of stuff, and get them using it, get them to review it, honest reviews as well. If it's rubbish, it's rubbish. I need to know that. So it's about building that social proof, and with a video, it's kind of the same as what people say about salesmen. A good salesman can sell a bad product. Well, not really, because then you're just kind of conning people and misrepresenting something. So it's if you've got a good salesman, you want to give them a good product, and then you can that's how you really get into the higher stratospheres of business success. So and how do you know if you've got a good or bad product? And it's almost kind of circular. You need that social proof. You need to get it out there. You need to talk to people. You need to do all that kind of stuff. You need to market it, even just in small little doses. You need to market, build a test, market it, get results from that test, oscillate to something. I always call it damped oscillation. So you're going to have some wins and some losses. All right. So you got a wave on a graph, and that wave should get smaller and smaller and smaller towards a kind of confluence point. It'll never quite be there. It'll never be perfect. You'll still be getting some wins and losses every now and again based on what the decisions you're making. But at some point, you want that oscillation to be much closer to a point of success than massive wins and massive failures. And something sustainable. You've brought up the word sustainable a few times. Something sustainable. And just at the beginning, it's so hard to tell. That's what's so hard about starting up a business with, especially if you're starting something with no client base, no previous client base. To be honest, it's much easier if you've already had a career. So I've gone from rocket scientist to wizard, running wizard schools in immersive events things, to becoming a Viking. I've gone through very different career phases in totally different industries. I will say it's usually a lot easier for someone that's been in an industry for a while, has spotted a problem, come up with a solution for that problem, and has a network to be able to deal with that problem. When you're doing it on your own, it's much harder, and and that's where you've talked about it before. That's where coming up with a kind of a longer term plan is actually much more useful for businesses, because what you can do is go, okay, well, we're not going to do. It would have, if you're talking about the very seeds of a business, it would be a terrible idea for that person to spend loads of money on a big budget thing to get their product out there. What would be a better idea is go, okay, we're going to do some smaller videos showing off the product. We're going to do an A/B test. So we're going to take, potentially you can use the same footage for that A/B test, but you can go, okay, so we're going to film half a day. We're going to take this A/B test, and then what we're going to do is that's going to give us a result. We're going to go, okay, people like this feature, they don't like this feature. Then when you spend all your money on the bigger project, the full day, the 2 days, whatever it is, a week, and you're putting all the graphics in and all that kind of stuff, and you're doing all those fancy things. You already know a lot of stuff, or at least you have a reasonable idea of a lot of stuff leading up to that. So it's about that longer term plan with marketing, 100%.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about here is like A/B testing in regard to ads, physical ads, Facebook ads, etc. But also you can do the same thing with content, right? Like if you've got an idea with content, right? Like I'll give an example. I launched the podcast just because I thought it would be a good idea. I launched 10 episodes as a test to be like, okay, let's do 10. Let's find out. Let's see if people like it. Okay, got to the end of 10, people wanted more. Okay, cool. So now I know that's my validation point there. So I was like, okay, we've done 10. What was the reality? What was the truth? Okay, so now it became a pillar of content. And, I sort of talk about pillars of content in content quite a lot, but pillars of content are basically consistent points of content. So you can make a series, you can have a specific theme. This podcast could be a pillar of content that we do consistently and our audience gets to know that we do consistently, and what those kind of values and those beliefs and what the actual solutions we're solving here within the podcast, right? A lot of the podcast for me is about talking to business owners about their struggles and about the things that I didn't know when I was starting. That's the point, because then hopefully if someone is starting now, they'll hopefully consume bits and bobs, and then they'll actually be in a stronger position to start than I was when I started. If that's the reality, great. If not, then okay, that's fine. But that's the goal, that's the want, that's the need for me, and that's why I do it. Because is it help to build relationships? Does it help us have content? Yes, of course. But it's actually then asking that you need to ask yourself, especially if you're going to create content, especially like a podcast, you need to ask yourself, okay, well, why are you creating it? What's the reason, right? And we do the same with business. And I would recommend, if you haven't done that and you are looking to start a business, you do ask yourself, why am I actually starting to do this as a business? Why do I want to do this as a business? What are the reasons behind that? And
there's a lot of personal reasons that go behind. I mean, I mentioned earlier I was going on my own fat loss journey, and to be honest, it makes if you can, to use a really terrible piece of business jargon, there are synergies that you can create between things that are going on in your life and creating a business, and that makes your content more genuine. If I'm reading loads of stuff about fat loss anyway, and I am scientifically minded, analytical minded, all that kind of stuff, if I'm doing it anyway, well, okay, I can start to talk and turn this into something for other people. I can take the 10 studies that I read on how much protein should be in your diet and condense that down and simplify that for people, because nobody has the time to read those 10 studies. I just do that because I'm an idiot. So yeah, you kind of got all things like that. And you mentioned something earlier that I was going to talk about as well, which was I've totally forgotten. It's gone out of my head. Never mind. But
it wasn't anything. It was all an illusion.
Yeah, it was all an illusion.
Maybe we'll come back.
What was the question you asked? If you asked one, I don't think you did.
I didn't. I think I just went on a monotribe. But I mean, this kind of like leads to the final point for me for the podcast anyway, because we covered everything I wanted to cover. But for me at the end, I like to give you an opportunity to throw in a topic or throw in a question that will hopefully jump into your mind. For me specifically, if you have any, and it's always designed, it's not a trick question, because everyone thinks, oh my god, it's a trick question. What if I don't have anything in the world ends? It doesn't. But do you have anything? Sight and shoot. It's funny because everyone asks me like, what's your most exciting shoot, or what's the biggest project you've done, or what's the coolest project? And for me, because we, to be honest, only take on projects that we really want to do and I find really value in doing, I don't really have one. Either I don't have any, or I have, or everything. It's the two ways I can answer the question, because for me, it's important, and it kind of builds off what we talked about earlier about values. It's really important to make sure that you do things for the right reasons, whether you're getting paid £5 or either getting paid £5,000. It doesn't, the money is a different facet of the business, right? The values and the morals and the people are the actual most important part of the business, because they are the things that are going to be sustainable or going to be there for a longer period of time than your sticker that you put on your service at that time. Because when you start out in business, you don't know. You're just like, just pay me anything. I don't really know how much this is worth, right? And then as you gain more experience, as you gain more understanding, and as you hopefully start growing, you have other costs, you have other things, and you end up going, okay, I have to make X on a project for it to even be feasible for me to do, because I'm trading a lot of time or a lot of energy or a lot of resources or whatever to doing that project, and I need to make sure it covers my bills or my costs or etc. And then for me to make some on the side, right? Like, because we're a for-profit business, that's the definition of for-profit business. But I mean, does that answer your question? I know it doesn't answer your question, but does that kind of... It's a difficult one for me to answer because I don't really have one. to be
No,
honest.
no, it makes total sense, and it comes down to it comes a little bit into what we are talking about earlier, because I was talking about the whole idea of pivoting and things like that, and I think this is the biggest thing that leads to business failure is being too attached to an idea that you don't see that the market isn't reacting well to it. It's this kind of stuff, and maybe I don't know whether you've got a bad experience, but maybe the worst kind of clients would be those that are so attached to an idea that when you're telling them like, yeah, the video was good, but it's all the other stuff. The other stuff isn't going right. You need to listen to the market. You need to listen to what people are telling you. People don't want this idea. It's going to be very hard to sell. All of that kind of stuff. So I think being too attached to an idea can that's a real business killer, and it means when you should have decided to pivot, you didn't pivot, and that's
And I think it's
a big problem.
I think it's a similar thing can happen, and we'll wrap up in a moment. But I think it's very similar when we look at sales or leads, or like when an inquiry comes in and it doesn't come to anything, right? Because when I was starting out in business, we would get an inquiry and I would go, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, it's an inquiry, oh my god, someone wants to work with me, right? But then it doesn't happen for whatever reason. Quote's too high, life gets in the way, whatever. And for me, I've learned to get less and less emotionally attached to that project until the deposit's in the account, right? Because the deposit in the account means it's actually going to happen. Everything else outside up to that point doesn't, it can still fall through. Because I've had projects that are like, we're at the final stage where they have a deposit invoice and everything, and then it just falls through. It just disappears, right? And the thing is, if you get your heart set on, oh my god, this project's going to be amazing, oh my god, and I think that's why I answer the question the way I do from your previous question, is because you're going to get demotivated every time. And to an extent, we need a level of motivation in our business. Should you always be motivated when you come to work? Not necessarily. That's a level of discipline versus motivation, and that's a separate topic for another day. But the point is, you can't let your emotional attachment to a project cloud how much it's worth or whether you do it or not. Because let's say I fall in love with a project, but the actual business that's offering me the project has very different values to me, and I know that our personalities aren't going to clash, I still shouldn't really take the project on, no matter how much I love the idea, or no matter how much I love the concept or the project. And I think it's a very honourable thing, but also a very positive thing for a business owner when they can do it. Because, I say to some people sometimes, look, I don't think we're the right people for you. I don't think we're the right service provider for you. And that's not me saying we couldn't help you. There's something about that business owner, their values, their expectations, whatever it may be, or potentially we just cost too much in comparison to what they believe, what they can spend, right? Maybe, right? Or vice versa. And it's important to establish that. It's important to understand that. But before I go on, we're very in the same, where we'll both just go on ramps. But where for those who are interested in seeing some of the Viking Fitness stuff and seeing some of the fat loss stuff and etc. I mean, where's best for people to reach out to you to see your work and to see what you're doing?
So I've got a few places. So just in terms of the one place where you'll get all the links to everything is just www.cameronreadman.com. And that's READ for Readman. And I've got a portfolio on there with links to all the other businesses. So that's got links to the fat loss course and Steel Viking, nice and easy, steelviking.co.uk. And yes, my fat loss course is called the 1% way.com, I believe. Yes, it is .com, that one. And yeah, I've also got all the social media pages. So at Cameron Readman, no, it's actually at Cam Readman. On Facebook and Instagram, especially people in and around Salisbury. So I'm not necessarily new to the area, but I didn't grow up here or anything like that. So I'd love to connect more with business owners in Salisbury. So if you're around, give me a follow, send me a message, say hi. I'm a friendly person.
Fantastic.
I promise not to chat your ears off as well.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for your time, my friend.
No worries. Thank you.
thank you for coming back, ladies and gents. I hope you did find this interview very, very valuable, and I think Cameron has a very, very interesting story and and he's a fountain of knowledge for those of you who are looking to go into business anytime soon. So thank you ever so much for coming back, and I hope you did take value from this episode. And if you would like to hear what's happening next or see what's happening next, make sure to be subscribed to the channel, and I would love to hear what you think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you very, very soon.